Across the world, people talk about mysterious places, strange sightings, ancient monuments, and patterns hidden in maps, but very few ever notice the line that ties them all together, a silent path, circling the earth like an invisible scar. This line cuts across continents, deserts, oceans, forgotten civilizations, military bases, and some of the most heavily studied UFO hotspots in human history. This is the 37th parallel. And for decades, governments, researchers, and secret agencies have quietly monitored it, avoiding public attention because everything along this line suggests a truth far stranger than fiction. That the world's ancient builders, unexplained lights, recurring abductions, mysterious disappearances, and hidden underground structures are not random. They are aligned, geographically, historically, and intentionally. Imagine unfolding a map of Earth and drawing a single horizontal line across it, right at 37 degrees north. At first, it just looks like a footnote from a geography textbook. But then you start marking the locations of unusual events. Cattle mutilations, mass UFO sightings, ancient megalithic structures, restricted military test zones, vanished civilizations. Without even trying, the pins begin forming a perfect pattern, a corridor, a highway, a path of activity too precise to dismiss. It stretches across the United States, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, touching places where history blurs into myth. Consider the American Southwest. Along the 37th parallel lies a chain of notorious hotspots: the Joplin Spook Light of Missouri, the mysterious Brown Mountain Lights of North Carolina, the Dulce underground base of New Mexico, and multiple classified testing zones in Nevada and Utah. Entire clusters of cattle mutilations, clean, surgical, unexplainable, line up along this same band. Ranchers for decades have reported silent helicopters, hovering lights, and creatures that move without sound. Law enforcement began documenting the cases, then suddenly stopped publishing reports. Files vanished. Witnesses became unreliable. The silence became suspicious. Now, follow the line eastward across the ocean. You run straight into the Mediterranean, and into some of the oldest mysteries recorded by humankind. This same latitude intersects the cradle of civilization. Ancient Sumer, the land where humans first wrote about beings descending from the sky. It touches old Mesopotamian ziggurats, Egyptian temples, and forgotten ruins whose stones remain cut with such impossible precision that modern engineers still cannot replicate the technique. Even the Great Pyramid's design follows mathematical constants found in the movement of stars directly above the 37th parallel sky path thousands of years ago. Travel further, and you reach the region around Mount Ararat, the legendary resting place of Noah's Ark, an area with repeated reports of metallic shapes embedded deep within the ice. Continue a little more, and the line crosses ancient Armenia, a zone long associated with portals, sky gods, and unexplained celestial events. Many of its megalithic structures align perfectly with constellations visible at the same latitude thousands of years in the past, as if the builders were mapping the sky not as it was, but as it would someday be. But the pattern doesn't stop with mythology. Modern governments have quietly built some of their most secret underground facilities along this exact latitude. Not because the land is convenient, but because the activity already existed there long before these nations were formed. When the U.S. Air Force looked for ideal locations for classified bases, they didn't simply choose remote land, they chose this line. The Dugway Proving Ground, Los Alamos, Area 52, and multiple hidden installations rumored to study extraterrestrial biology all sit shockingly close to the 37th degree. Why? Because sightings were already concentrated in these areas. Something was already traveling along this path. Something that didn't care about borders, flags, or time periods. Governments simply built where the activity forced them to. Even ancient cultures seem to know this. Look at the ruins that lie directly along this line. In Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, older than the pyramids, older than agriculture itself, sits nearly aligned with the same celestial markers tied to the 37th parallel. Its carvings show animals that don't match the local species of the time, and heavenly bodies that seem to depict catastrophic events from tens of thousands of years ago. Why would prehistoric humans carve astronomical knowledge that modern scientists only decoded recently? Move toward China, and you hit the Xi'an Pyramid Fields, where gigantic mysterious earth pyramids mirror the pattern of stars, just like those in Egypt and Mexico. Most of these pyramids remain closed to the public. Satellite footage shows entrances that were once visible but later buried or blocked. What lies inside them remains officially unknown. But unofficially, many believe the Chinese government discovered something inside that forced them to turn the area into a restricted zone. Now follow the 37th parallel beneath the seas. In the Pacific, the line crosses areas where naval ships have reported unidentified submerged objects, crafts moving underwater at speeds impossible for known technology. These incidents were documented by sailors, sonar operators, and tracking technicians. Some of the largest encounters in naval history occurred almost exactly on this latitude. And whenever one of these events made a small ripple in the media, the reports were quickly shut down. It's almost as if the pattern itself is classified. But here's the deeper question. Why this line? Why would UFOs, ancient civilizations, secret military bases, and strange natural anomalies all circle the Earth along a single invisible thread? One theory suggests that the 37th parallel is a geophysical energy highway, a region where Earth's magnetic fields align in a way that makes interdimensional travel or atmospheric entry easier. Another theory proposes that ancient civilizations built their structures along this line because it allowed them to communicate with something, or someone, beyond Earth. A third theory claims that underground cave systems, stretching thousands of miles, lie beneath this latitude, connecting regions we consider separate. Evidence of enormous subterranean chambers has been found under Turkey, Italy, the American Southwest, and parts of China, all along the 37th line. Some researchers believe these caves weren't formed naturally, that they were carved by intelligence either ancient or non-human. And then there is the disturbing possibility that the 37th parallel isn't chosen by humans or aliens, but by Earth itself. That this latitude is part of a natural planetary grid, a blueprint older than life, older than continents, where energy flows in ways we barely understand. Ancient cultures might have sensed this and built temples there. Modern governments might have discovered it through classified research and established bases to monitor it. And non-human craft might be using these pathways the same way migratory animals use magnetic fields. But perhaps the most unsettling idea is the simplest. Maybe the 37th parallel is not a line of activity. Maybe it's a boundary, a border between what humanity is allowed to know and what we are not ready to understand. A checkpoint between dimensions, a corridor where the fabric of reality is thinner, where visitors can slip in and out with minimal resistance. Governments might fear this line because they cannot control it, because no matter how many bases they build, how many files they classify, how many sightings they debunk, the pattern continues. The activity persists. Lights still appear. Structures still reveal impossible engineering. People still vanish. And ancient ruins whisper that something has been monitoring this line far longer than governments have existed, watching us from a vantage point beyond our comprehension. The 37th parallel is not just a geographic line. It is a message carved into the Earth's skin. A warning, maybe, or an invitation, or a reminder that the world is far stranger than our textbooks or leaders will ever admit. And the deeper you follow this line, the clearer the truth becomes. Someone or something marked this path long before we learned how to read it. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 0, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 1, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 2, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 3, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 4, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 5, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 6, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 7, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 8, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 9, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 10, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 11, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 12, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 13, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 14, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 15, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 16, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 17, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 18, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. Beneath the Earth's crust, ancient tunnels stretch like veins, following a magnetic route that aligns uncannily with the 37th parallel. Researchers stumbling into these caverns describe smooth walls, melted stone, and chambers that resonate with a low hum, as if responding to an invisible frequency. Governments deny their existence, yet declassified maps hint at networks connecting continents. Each descent reveals artifacts that defy dating, markings resembling star maps, and air currents that pulse rhythmically like breath in a sleeping colossus. Explorers note pattern 19, observing how the magnetic pull seems stronger here, guiding movement as if the tunnels themselves were alive. All across the world, military bases appear to be positioned in strategic locations, places chosen for defense, surveillance, and geography. At least, that is what official manuals say. But when you overlay a world map with the grid of magnetic nodal intersections that run along the 37th parallel, a far stranger pattern emerges. These bases do not simply rest on convenient land. They sit directly on the crossing points of Earth's strongest geomagnetic lines, as if intentionally placed where invisible forces converge, where the planet's natural energy bends and folds in ways we do not yet understand. These are not coincidences. These are coordinates. Imagine the Earth not as a sphere of land and ocean, but as a vast electromagnetic organism, pulsing, vibrating, humming with energy fields that stretch beneath our feet. Now, imagine that certain points on this planetary grid act like amplifiers, points where the energy spikes, twists, spirals, or collapses into stillness. Ancient cultures called them dragon lines, ley nodes, or stargates. Modern governments call them strategic assets. But the truth is that the bases built on these sites behave differently from ordinary military installations. Strange sightings occur near them. Aircraft behave erratically near their airspace. Instruments malfunction for reasons that never make it to official reports. And every time someone tries to investigate, the trail ends in silence. Start with the United States. Stretching across the 37th parallel, the country hosts a chain of military installations whose secrecy level is unmatched. One of the biggest examples is the Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, a massive facility known for testing biological and chemical systems. But its location also sits directly on a point where two magnetic lines intersect, forming a nodal point strong enough to affect compass readings for miles. Pilots have reported losing GPS lock near the region. Drones malfunction. Weather balloons behave erratically, drifting in impossible zigzags rather than smooth arcs. Even animals avoid parts of the nearby desert as if sensing something that humans cannot. Move a little farther east, and you hit Los Alamos. The birthplace of the atomic bomb does not simply sit in the mountains by chance. It lies almost perfectly aligned with the same nodal structures connected to the 37th parallel. Scientists working there have long documented anomalies, particles behaving in unpredictable ways, machines registering sudden surges without power changes, and magnetic readings spiking at random intervals. Many researchers believe these interruptions are not malfunctions, but interactions with the Earth's deeper electromagnetic framework. The lab sits on a node, and the node responds to activity above it. Further east still, another installation sits quietly, the White Sands Missile Range. It is known for missile tests, spacecraft experiments, and classified aviation projects. But this base too lies directly at an intersection point of geomagnetic lines. In 1947, when the Roswell incident occurred, the crash happened near the perimeter of this same nodal region. Many now theorize that whatever was flying that day might have been drawn to, or disrupted by, the electromagnetic field swirling beneath the ground. Perhaps it wasn't an accident that the craft fell where it did. Perhaps both humans and visitors are monitoring the same planetary grid for very different reasons. But the United States is not alone. Continue along the 37th parallel, tracing the curve across the Atlantic. In Spain, the Moron Air Base sits precisely on an intersection of magnetic lines mapped by geophysicists decades ago. Pilots have reported ball lightning, silent glowing orbs, and sudden radar ghosts that move too intelligently to be atmospheric glitch. At least 6 classified investigations have been conducted on unexplained aerial events near this base, reports that never reach the public. Why? Because when a base is built on an energetic node, sightings become routine, and routine sightings become national secrets. Across the Mediterranean, the line cuts through Cyprus, where the British military has operated bases since the 1960s. Cyprus sits atop another powerful nodal crossing. Local fishermen have long reported underwater lights moving in straight paths beneath the surface, objects that accelerate and vanish without creating waves or turbulence. Sonar operators have documented readings that appear one moment and disappear the next, as if something slipped behind a curtain of physics. Each time a team attempts to track these anomalies, they vanish near the same magnetic convergence point, travel east into the Middle East, and the pattern becomes even more unsettling. Multiple U.S. and NATO bases in Turkey, especially near areas like Malatya and Incirlik, align nearly perfectly with the 37th parallel and its underlying nodal system. These regions have a long history of unusual sky activity, dating back to ancient times. Old Anatolian legends speak of sky doors and descending lights witnessed by shepherds. Later, during the Cold War, radar stations frequently reported objects that defied trajectory logic. Objects that moved fast, then halted mid-air, then accelerated straight upward. Engineers blamed atmospheric interference. Yet, the same interference conveniently occurred only near the nodal intersection beneath the base. Move deeper into Asia, and the line slices through Iran and Afghanistan, 2 regions where underground facilities are rumored to house unknown technologies and captured materials. A number of these bases sit suspiciously close to nodal points, mapped by geophysicists studying the Earth's magnetic anomalies. Reports from soldiers mention electronic fog, a rare atmospheric phenomenon that disrupts both radio and visual perception. Entire convoys have described sudden static clouds that swallow sound, distort distance, and create optical illusions where mountains appear to shift or vanish temporarily. Such events were logged, classified, and never spoken of again. In China, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Several facilities in Shanxi and Gansu, regions already known for their mysterious pyramids, align with the nodal crossing points along the 37th parallel. These bases guard areas that satellite images once showed covered in peculiar geometric formations, structures that mysteriously disappeared in later images as if buried or hidden. Local residents have long reported trembling ground, humming vibrations at night, and lights emerging from hillsides. Some claim entire ridges glow faintly for seconds before going dark, as if a massive energy surge ripples beneath the earth. The government calls these mineral reflections, yet the light has been recorded moving like something alive. But here is the deeper question. Why do world powers choose these nodal intersections? What do they gain from building bases on points where magnetic energies are strongest? One theory is that the intersections amplify communication signals, allowing bases to receive transmissions that normal antennas cannot detect, perhaps signals not originating from human sources. Another theory suggests the bases use the natural energy grid to mask underground operations, hiding structures that would otherwise appear on seismic scans. A more unsettling idea is that governments discovered something already beneath the nodes, something ancient, something powerful, something not built by human hands. Perhaps the bases were not constructed to study the nodes. Perhaps they were constructed to guard whatever lies within them. Witness accounts from former military personnel add to the mystery. One retired communications officer claimed that certain locations near nodal intersections create blind spots in radio frequencies, zones where signals vanish completely or scatter unpredictably. Another officer reported that at one installation, instruments detected pulses from deep underground at perfectly timed intervals, like a heartbeat or a coded message. Engineers dismissed it as seismic activity, but the pulses were too regular, too intentional. And then there is the strangest piece of evidence: aircraft testing. Multiple classified aviation programs test their most advanced prototypes only at bases situated on nodal points. Why? Because electromagnetic interference at these intersections can reveal how a craft behaves under extreme conditions. Some pilots claim that the nodes allow radar signatures to bend, distort, or vanish, a natural advantage for stealth technology. But skeptics argue it is not about testing aircraft. It is about observing how unidentified craft interact with these forces. If something non-human uses the Earth's magnetic grid as a travel route, these nodes are checkpoints, crossroads, intersections in a map we did not create. Governments might not fear the bases themselves. They fear what those bases are built on. They fear the possibility that Earth's magnetic grid is not just a natural phenomenon, but a system, a network, a structure. And that by placing their most secret installations on these nodes, they are not hiding from the world. They are watching something else, monitoring a traffic pattern older than civilization, guarding a doorway that was already there. And if the 37th parallel is a highway, these nodal intersections are the toll gates, the crossing points, the places where activity spikes and reality thins, the places where the unseen becomes visible, if only for a moment. Military bases do not simply defend borders, they defend mysteries. And along the 37th parallel, the greatest mysteries lie deep beneath the surface, pulsing with an energy we still do not understand. For decades, geological survey teams have gone missing along the 37th parallel, expeditions that set out to map fault lines, magnetic anomalies, mineral deposits, or underground cavities, only to vanish without leaving a single trace of equipment, footprints, or radio logs. These disappearances are not random. They form a pattern, a chain of vanishing points aligned with magnetic nodes, underground voids, and tunnel networks that governments refuse to publicly acknowledge. No search effort has ever explained what happened. No remains have ever been recovered. Every missing team walked into the same invisible threshold and never walked back out. Imagine a group of trained geologists, people used to navigating remote terrain, people who know how to handle storms, seismic instability, and extreme environments. They move with protocols, schedules, backup communication lines, location beacons, survival gear, redundancies for every system. These aren't hikers, these are specialists, and yet entire groups disappear as if swallowed by the land itself. Radios go silent without distress calls. GPS trackers freeze at one coordinate, then blink out. Weather remains calm, no predators, no hostile forces. Just emptiness. An emptiness that feels staged, almost deliberate. One of the earliest and most unsettling cases occurred in the American Southwest in the 1970s. A 4-person survey team working near the border of New Mexico and Colorado radioed in to report unusual magnetic readings, numbers so high their instruments began malfunctioning. The last words transmitted were simple and calm. "We're getting interference, checking equipment." Then silence. When helicopters searched the site, they found the camp undisturbed, backpacks intact, food uneaten, tools neatly arranged, as if the team had stood up mid-conversation and walked into thin air. The sand around the area held no tracks, no drag marks, no footprints leading away. It was as if the desert floor swallowed them without disturbing a grain. Years later, internal memos revealed that the magnetic spike reported by the team aligned perfectly with a mapped geomagnetic crossing point, one the government had quietly kept classified. Whatever interrupted their instruments might also have interrupted their reality. Another disappearance took place in Turkey, where 2 geologists studying underground aquifers vanished while exploring a limestone ridge. The cave entrance they entered was shallow, barely 20 meters deep, a place that took minutes to inspect. When they failed to return, local authorities sent a rescue team. The cave was empty. No sign of collapse, no tunnels leading deeper, just an abrupt dead end, as if the earth had sealed itself behind them. But the strangest detail came from villagers who reported seeing a flash of white-blue light near the ridge that night. Silent, circular, pulsing once before fading into the sky. Their story was dismissed as superstition. Yet satellite ionospheric sensors detected a sudden energy spike over that exact location, an anomaly never publicly explained. In Iran, a team of researchers studying seismic fault activity disappeared from a mountainous corridor lying directly on the 37th parallel. Their satellite equipment recorded a strange electromagnetic pulse moments before contact was lost. When military search units inspected the region, they found their monitoring station melted, literally fused, as if exposed to extreme heat without any sign of fire. Metal poles were softened like wax. Plastic cases looked warped, and yet the surrounding vegetation remained untouched. Trees were unharmed. Grass was green. Soil showed no burn marks. It was as if the heat had selectively targeted objects, not the environment. It was not a natural phenomenon. A witness from a nearby village later told investigators he saw a hole of light opening against the mountain slope. Not a beam, not a flare. A hole, round, opaque, glowing from within. A doorway rather than a light source. When asked why he waited months to share the story, he said soldiers told villagers not to speak of anything they saw that night. Their words were simple. It was an earthquake flash. Yet everyone knew there had been no earthquake. The pattern continues across nations, each case stranger than the last. In China, 3 researchers mapping underground water channels vanished during an expedition near the Shangxi Pyramid region. Their drones captured footage of a perfectly circular cavity in the earth that appeared for only seconds before collapsing, sealing itself completely. Geological experts reviewing the footage said such an event was impossible. Soil and stone don't open and close like living tissue, but the video clearly showed it. A temporary aperture, a circular void, edges smooth as polished glass. Authorities confiscated the footage and classified the entire case. Families were told the team was lost in a cave-in, even though the terrain in that area has no known caves. Some disappearances are not silent, but violently abrupt. In Nevada, a team investigating magnetic anomalies near restricted territory sent out a final, frantic radio warning moments before they vanished. "We're seeing lights underground, movement, something shifting." Their voices cut off mid-sentence. Investigators found their equipment scattered in a perfect circle, as if dropped from above or thrown outward by a force without wind, pressure, or explosion. A metallic taste lingered in the air, according to responders, like the aftermath of lightning, even though the sky was cloudless. In some instances, survivors exist. But their testimonies are fragmented, inconsistent, contaminated by trauma, or erased entirely. One geologist in Spain reappeared 48 hours after vanishing along a survey route. He was found wandering miles away from the site, dehydrated, confused, unable to explain how he got there. His watch showed that only minutes had passed since his last known radio check-in, but his body showed signs of 2 full days without water. He kept repeating the same phrase. The ground opened. The light took us. Every attempt to interview him further triggered panic attacks so severe he had to be sedated. Soon after, military personnel took over the case, and the man was quietly moved to an unspecified facility for medical evaluation. No public report followed. What ties all these events together? The disappearances occur precisely along geomagnetic fault lines, spots where magnetic fields twist unnaturally, where instruments behave unpredictably, where underground voids resonate as if hollowed by something other than erosion. These nodal intersections seem to function like weak points, thin spots in the crust where space, gravity, or time itself wavers. Geological teams, with their sensors and drills and mapping gear, may be triggering effects without understanding what they're touching. Some researchers believe these locations are entrances to an ancient subterranean network, tunnels carved long before human history, perhaps not by human hands. Survey teams may be stumbling into passages intended to remain hidden. Others believe the disappearances are the result of interactions with unknown energy fields, natural or artificial, that distort direction, perception, even visibility. A few go further. They believe something uses these nodal points as doorways, something that moves beneath the Earth's surface the way birds navigate magnetic currents in the sky. Governments fear this possibility, not because it confirms other life exists, but because it confirms that they are not in control of what lies beneath. Every disappearance reminds them that the planet still holds secrets not meant for human exploration, secrets guarded not by soldiers or fences, but by the Earth itself. When a geological survey team goes missing, officials announce equipment failure, landslide, or environmental hazard. But search crews know better. They see camps left intact, footprints that stop mid-stride, tools placed neatly as if time froze, GPS devices that record impossible jumps in location. They feel the electric charge in the air, hear the subtle low-frequency hum under their boots, sense the eerie silence around the site. Something happens along the 37th parallel, something that takes people cleanly, quietly, without resistance, something that knows when it has been found, something that closes behind itself. And each disappearance leaves the same haunting question. Are these teams being taken, or are they stepping into a part of the Earth humanity was never meant to enter? Across the world, cattle mutilations appear like warnings carved into the land. Animals found drained of blood, organs removed with surgical precision. No tracks, no predators, no struggle. For decades, these events were dismissed as superstition or hysteria. But when investigators began cross-mapping the locations with electromagnetic data, something chilling emerged. The mutilations were not random. They occurred in clusters, tight, concentrated bursts in specific regions, and every time a cluster formed, the electromagnetic field in that area spiked violently. EM bursts, short, intense pulses of energy, appeared minutes or hours before the animals were discovered, as if something arrived, as if something operated, as if something left. The official explanations never mention these pulses. Ranchers report seeing their radios go silent moments before they find the carcasses. Phone signals drop without warning. The air hums. Compasses spin. Livestock panic, running in tight circles before collapsing. Dogs refuse to approach the bodies, and when scientists bring equipment to measure the fields, they find traces of microwaves, ionization patterns, and radiation signatures not associated with anything natural. These bursts do not match lightning. They do not match power lines. They do not match military frequencies. They match nothing we understand. But they match each other perfectly. One of the earliest documented cases occurred in the mid-1970s in Colorado. A rancher awoke to find several cattle lying dead, completely bloodless, eyes removed, tongues gone, incisions so clean they looked laser cut. Law enforcement first assumed cult activity, but deputies noticed something strange. Their radios wouldn't transmit at the site. Static drowned every channel. Officers later learned that the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration recorded a sudden EM spike that night, a burst lasting less than 2 seconds, but powerful enough to scramble magnetometers miles away. When investigators plotted the burst on a map, It aligned precisely with the center of the mutilation cluster. Something pulsed right there, something powerful. Years later, a similar incident unfolded in New Mexico. A series of 8 cattle were found mutilated along the 37th parallel, each in the same condition. Blood removed, reproductive organs excised, circular patches of flesh taken with impossible precision. This time, the evidence was even clearer. Satellite sensors detected a radial ionospheric disturbance over the region, an EM footprint resembling a ripple expanding outward from a point on the ground. The ripple lasted mere seconds, yet left a measurable signature in the upper atmosphere. Local ranchers reported strange lights hovering silently hours before. A sheriff's deputy driving home after midnight saw a beam of pale light touch down on a ridge, then snap off like a switch. Moments later, his patrol car stalled. Engine dead. Electronics dead. As if the entire electrical system were erased. When he turned the key again, the car roared back to life. Clock reset, radio wiped, dashboard flickering. He found the cattle the next morning. The deeper investigators looked, the more disturbing the pattern became. In Montana, EM bursts were detected on 3 separate nights at almost the exact same moment. 2:13 a.m. Within hours, ranchers reported mutilations spread across a 30-mile radius. Every site had the same details. No footprints, no blood, organs removed as though extracted through a vacuum. At one location, a mutilated cow lay beneath a tree whose branches had become magnetized. The needles on compasses spun wildly when held near the trunk. Metal objects left on the ground overnight developed static charge. The soil retained heat despite freezing temperatures. Wildlife avoided the area for weeks. Government agents arrived quickly. They blocked off the land, confiscated the bodies, and told the ranchers that coyotes were responsible. Even though coyotes leave torn flesh, tracks, blood trails, and never, ever drain an animal completely. The ranchers knew they were lying. You cannot explain radiation signatures, magnetized branches, and perfect surgical cuts with coyotes. Another pattern emerged. Mutilation clusters often occurred near underground voids or geological anomalies, areas where the Earth's magnetic field bends, where underground tunnels hummed with measurable low-frequency vibrations. When EM bursts appeared, they seemed to travel along these fault lines like signals following wires. Some scientists theorized that the bursts originated below the surface, not above, that the energy was coming from underground chambers not mapped, not natural, and not empty. In Utah, a team of independent researchers set up sensors to study cattle mutilation hotspots. For weeks, their equipment recorded nothing unusual. Then, one night, around 3 a.m., the sensors detected a sharp electromagnetic pulse, strong enough to overload 2 devices. Within 45 minutes, they located a freshly mutilated cow near a dry creek bed. The ground around the carcass was warm, though the air temperature hovered near freezing. A faint smell of ozone, like the aftermath of lightning, hung in the air. But the sky had been clear. No storms, no wind, no sound. Only silence and heat. The researchers reviewed their audio recorders. For 8 seconds before the EM burst, the microphones captured a low, unnatural hum. Steady, mechanical, almost rhythmic. Then silence. Then the burst. One researcher said it sounded like a machine too big to exist. Another said it reminded him of pressure building inside something enormous. But no machine was found. No tracks. No landing imprints. Just the mutilated animal and the scorched, magnetized soil beneath it. Some cases hint at something more intelligent than natural energy phenomena. In Nevada, cattle were found arranged in geometric patterns. Perfect triangles, lines, even spirals. Each cluster followed an EM burst recorded by sensors at a nearby observatory. One burst measured over 20 milligauss, far higher than the Earth's natural magnetic field. A ranch hand who arrived moments after the event said he felt his body vibrate from the inside, as though his bones were resonating with the air. His hair stood straight up. His watch stopped. And when he looked toward a ridge, he saw 3 spherical lights floating silently in a line, pulsing softly. They blinked out one by one, and the vibration stopped instantly. To this day, he refuses to talk publicly. He says that whatever he saw didn't feel like craft. It felt like presence. Across oceans, the same pattern repeats. In Argentina, Cattle mutilation clusters follow EM storms measured by researchers studying ionospheric anomalies. In Australia, farmers report animals found with organs removed so cleanly that veterinarians compare the cuts to modern laser technology. Each event traced back to a spike in local electromagnetic energy. In Norway, reindeer herders have found entire groups of animals collapse simultaneously, bloodless, with no predators nearby. Their phone cameras glitch when pointed at the bodies. The northern lights above flicker in unnatural pulses, matching the EM spikes recorded on ground sensors. Why would EM bursts sync with mutilations so precisely? What triggers the bursts? What is using them? Some scientists propose the bursts are byproducts, side effects of transport systems or energy fields used by an unknown presence, something arriving or leaving quickly, bending the electromagnetic space around it. Others suggest the bursts are intentional, like scanning beams or surgical tools that require powerful fields to operate. A few believe the bursts are a protective mechanism, an attempt to mask their activity from human detection by overloading electronics. But there is a darker theory. The precision of the cuts, the lack of blood, the repeated focus on certain organs, tongues, reproductive systems, eyes, lymph nodes, suggests biological sampling, not for food, for data, for monitoring, as if cattle represent an environmental index, as if the organisms collected are indicators of planetary health. If so, the EM bursts could be part of the extraction process, sterilizing the area, neutralizing microbes, preserving tissue samples, a technical procedure, not an attack. This would explain why the bursts occur moments before the mutilations. They are part of the operation, not the aftermath. Government agencies know this. Declassified documents hint at radiation sweeps, microwave signatures, and unexplained ionization events before cattle are found. Yet the official stance remains denial. Why? Because acknowledgement leads to questions, and those questions lead to answers nobody in power wants to face. The synchronization between EM bursts and cattle mutilations is not coincidence. It is communication, a signal, a sign of activity aligned with the magnetic veins of the Earth, especially along the 37th parallel, where energy currents run the strongest. Something uses these currents, something follows them. Something sends bursts through them like pulses of intention. The mutilations are not random violence. They are pieces of data collected with surgical precision. And the EM bursts are the echoes of whatever technology performs them, brief ruptures in the electromagnetic skin of the planet. The question is no longer, who is doing this? The question is, what are they preparing for? For thousands of years, long before satellites mapped magnetic fields, long before governments built bases on nodal intersections, long before explorers vanished into the Earth, indigenous cultures around the world spoke of something hidden beneath the mountains. They called them sky veins. Not rivers, not tunnels, not caves. Veins. Pulsating channels of light that moved like living currents underneath the land, connecting sacred peaks, ancient valleys, and forbidden ridges. To outside scholars, these stories were treated as myth. But the tribes who carried these legends insisted that the sky veins were real, pathways where spirits traveled, where the sky touched the earth, where beings of light moved silently beneath stone. And every story, across every continent, described the same thing. Energy traveling through the ground like lightning trapped inside rock. When elders in the American Southwest spoke of the sky veins, they said they were older than any tribe, older than the mountains themselves. According to Navajo oral tradition, the sky veins were rivers of power carved into the bones of the world by the holy people. They said these veins guided the movements of the star wanderers, beings who descended during ancient times and taught early people where to build their homes, where not to walk, and where the ground could swallow those who disturbed it. One story tells of a group of hunters who camped near a ridge that pulsed with an unnatural glow beneath the dirt. At night, the earth vibrated like a distant drum, and a soft blue haze spread across the stones. When the hunters awoke, one of their companions was gone, his bed untouched, his tracks ending abruptly. The elders said he walked too close to a sky vein and was taken into the light that moves without sound. Move north into the lands of the Lakota, and you find similar legends. They speak of thunder paths, glowing channels beneath the Black Hills where the spirits of lightning dwell. They describe beings who travel inside these paths, appearing only when the world is changing. Tribal stories recount warriors who saw lights flickering under frozen lakes, too bright and too smooth to be reflections. Some nights, the entire ground would hum softly, vibrating like the tension of a bowstring being pulled back. The elders warned that the hum meant the thunder paths were active. No one dared to sleep on the ground during those nights, for fear they would be pulled beneath it. Across the ocean, the Maori of New Zealand speak of the Whenua Aho, lines of light that run beneath the mountains, connecting volcanic peaks over impossible distances. Their legends describe beings of energy traveling through the earth like lightning serpents, emerging only at the tips of sacred mountain ranges. One ancient tale recounts a young hunter who followed strange lights flickering beneath a valley floor. When he touched the ground, he felt a shock ripple through his body, and the earth beneath him glowed with a soft white pulse. He fainted, and when he awoke, hours later, he found he had been moved miles away, with no memory of how he traveled. The elders said the Whenua Aho carried him the way rivers carry leaves. In the Himalayas, Tibetan monks speak of Kongpo Naye, hidden channels beneath mountains through which sky beings travel without leaving footprints. These channels, according to their teachings, glow in meditation visions as veins of shimmering gold. Monks who have spent years in mountain hermitages claim the ground sometimes lights up beneath certain ridges as though the earth itself is breathing. They describe hearing low-frequency tones vibrating through the rock, tones that match no animal, no storm, no wind. Some monks believe these channels are gateways between realms, places where physical and spiritual worlds overlap, and they warn that when the Kongpo Nae hum with intensity, great change is coming. Travel to Japan, and ancient Shinto texts reference Chino Keikai, barriers of earth energy flowing beneath sacred mountains. These barriers are described as glowing blue streams beneath the soil that only priests and shamans could sense. One text recounts a shrine built over a place where the ground shone like trapped lightning. Villagers avoided the area at night, claiming that shadows moved without bodies, and that lights drifted under the surface like fireflies caught beneath water. According to lore, those who stepped directly above the glowing lines sometimes vanished, taken into the flowing sky beneath the stone. In South America, Andean tribes tell of caminos del cielo, paths of the sky beneath the mountains. These legends describe beings of pure energy traveling through crystalline tunnels inside the earth. The Inca believed certain mountains were alive, pulsing with the heartbeats of the gods, and that these heartbeat rhythms traveled along invisible lines beneath the soil. Their priests mapped these lines obsessively, tracing them across valleys, deserts, and glaciers. Some of their ancient stone structures, seemingly random or isolated, actually sit directly above known magnetic hotspots, only discovered by modern instruments centuries later. The Inca believed the sky veins were the arteries of the earth, carrying divine messages from one sacred mountain to another. In Australia, Aboriginal elders speak of the Min Min lines, pathways of glowing energy beneath the outback through which ancestral spirits traveled. They say glowing spheres sometimes emerge from these underground channels, floating silently across the desert before sinking back into the earth. Many settlers treated these stories as fantasy, but modern-day sightings continue, strange balls of light, silent and controlled, appearing along the same ancient paths described in oral legends older than recorded history. According to the elders, these lights rise when the land is disturbed, as warnings, or as watchers. What makes these legends extraordinary is not their imagination, but their consistency. Cultures separated by oceans, centuries, languages, and beliefs all describe the same thing. Glowing lines beneath mountains, humming channels of energy, beings traveling inside them, people disappearing near them, ancient structures built over nodal points, and lights emerging from the ground like reflections from a world beneath. Thousands of years ago, these tribes had no magnetic sensors, no satellites, no EM detectors. Yet, their stories map perfectly onto the same geomagnetic currents scientists now identify along the 37th parallel, the same underground tunnels, the same seismic anomalies, the same electromagnetic bursts, the same places where modern survey teams vanish and where cattle mutilations cluster. It is as if these indigenous peoples were documenting the Earth's hidden energy grid long before modern science stumbled upon it. Some anthropologists argue these legends are metaphors, symbolic stories meant to explain natural phenomena. But others, especially those studying Earth's magnetic fields, see startling alignment. They note that many indigenous sacred sites lie exactly on magnetic faults, that mountains considered alive by tribal cultures sit on nodes of extraordinary electromagnetic intensity, that the hums described by monks and shamans correspond to known, low-frequency vibrations recorded in those same regions. Even more unsettling are the stories of beings traveling inside the sky veins. Some tribes describe them as spirits, others describe them as ancestors. A few describe them as lights or star travelers who move beneath the ground like fish through water. These stories might sound mythical, but they echo modern eyewitness reports of underground lights, subterranean craft, and electromagnetic traces that behave like intelligent movement. Were these ancient cultures interacting with the same forces we now observe through high-tech instruments? Or were they witnessing something far older, something that uses the Earth itself as a conduit? Some researchers believe the sky veins are natural channels created by the Earth's magnetic field, intersecting with geological structures. Others suggest they are remnants of an ancient network, tunnels or conduits built by a civilization long forgotten, using technology that manipulated both stone and energy. A few propose something more complex, that the sky veins are dimensional pathways, thin corridors where space-time bends, allowing movement between places, times, or worlds. Indigenous legends often warn that traveling these veins is dangerous. They say the lines are alive, shifting, unpredictable. They say stepping on the wrong spot can cause a person to vanish, carried away by forces not meant for the living. They insist the sky veins open only during certain celestial alignments, when stars, seasons, and the Earth's own energy synchronize. When this happens, the lines glow, hum, vibrate, and watchers emerge. Modern science avoids these interpretations, yet the data tells a story eerily similar. Unexplained EM surges, underground magnetic pulses, anomalies in seismic patterns, sudden disappearances, strange lights rising from soil, tunnels that radiate like circuitry. Across every culture, every continent, every era, one truth repeats. There are veins of the sky flowing beneath the mountains, and something travels inside them. Long before satellites charted the continents, before modern borders were drawn, before compasses were even reliable, ancient cartographers created maps that defy every rule of geography we know. These maps, found in monasteries, forgotten libraries, underground archives, and private collections, contain markings and inscriptions scholars have never been able to fully interpret. But one phrase keeps appearing across different continents, written in different languages, drawn by hands separated by oceans and centuries. They labeled a specific horizontal line across the world as the divide of two Earths, not the equator, not the tropics, not any known boundary. This line sits exactly along what we now call the 37th parallel. To the modern eye, it is just a latitude. But to ancient mapmakers, it was something far more ominous, a border, a fault, a crossing between realms. Some maps draw it as a dotted line, others as a thick band. A few depict it as a serpentine ribbon stretching across mountains and oceans. Several have symbols, eyes, spirals, suns, broken circles, placed along this line as if marking locations of unusual importance. And the strangest detail of all, these maps were created long before any known civilization had the ability to calculate latitudes with such accuracy. How could they have known the placement of this line? What were they marking? One of the earliest examples was found in a monastery in Armenia, preserved in a leather-wrapped scroll from the 12th century. The parchment shows Europe, Asia, and parts of Africa in distorted medieval proportions. Yet across the drawing, a horizontal band runs perfectly through the central lands, labeled in ancient Armenian, Lor Nakarar, the line where worlds divide. Historians first assumed it referred to political borders, but the band cuts through mountains and deserts, ignoring kingdoms completely. Monks wrote in the margins that, above this line, the sky speaks. Below it, the earth remains silent. What could that possibly mean? Another map surfaced in 1863 in a private archive in Istanbul. Drawn by unknown cartographers centuries earlier, it marks a similar line across the Middle East, labeled Al-Faslu Bayn al-Alamain, the separation between the two earths. It depicts the land above the line decorated with strange symbols resembling stars or lights. Below the line, nothing. Just empty space. Modern analysts studying the pigments of the ink found traces of rare minerals found only in high-altitude regions, suggesting the mapmaker traveled across mountains exactly on the 37th parallel. Why would he go there? Why map such a line? Lost Chinese records speak of the Tiandi Xinghe, the celestial divide, drawn along the same path. A 9th century manuscript from the Tang dynasty describes the divide as a place where the dragons of the sky dive into the veins of the earth. It warns travelers not to camp along certain ridges because the stars walk too closely to the ground. Even today, magnetic anomalies in these regions cause compasses to spin, drones to fall, and instruments to glitch. Somehow, ancient cartographers sensed something extraordinary beneath this band and marked it as forbidden. Indigenous maps from North America, drawn on hide rather than parchment, also reveal the same dividing line. The Cherokee had a name for it, Anivwi Tsiskwa Gati, the path where the sky splits. They believed this horizontal path marked the boundary between the physical world and the shadow world. Their shamans mapped it without knowing latitude, without satellites, without mathematics. Yet their placement matches the 37th parallel almost perfectly. They warned that moving too close to certain mountain passes along this line would invite spirits that walk between the two skins of reality. Move across the ocean to old Mediterranean charts, and the same motif appears again. Mariners used to draw an invisible line across the sea, marking it with a symbol resembling an inverted V. They believed the waters above this point contained voices beneath the waves, strange lights surfacing at night, and storms appearing with unnatural speed. Medieval sailors feared crossing this band without offerings, believing it marked a break in the fabric of the world. One of the most disturbing finds comes from an early Arabic map stored in a Moroccan archive. Along the 37th parallel, the cartographer wrote Al-Ard al-Zahira and Al-Ard al-Batina, the visible earth and the hidden earth. The implication is unsettling, that the world perceived by humans is only the surface of a much larger realm, and the divide between these realms is not vertical, but horizontal. The map shows two Earths drawn atop one another, slightly offset, with the 37th parallel labeled as the threshold or seam between them. This is not metaphor. The precision of the line, the placement of symbols, and the warnings in the margins suggest the mapmaker believed the divide was literal. A Spanish map from the late 1400s depicts the same line with the phrase La División de las Dos Tierras. This map shows glowing circles along the line, almost like portals or nodes. In the margins, the mapmaker wrote cryptic notes. Here, the ground moves like water. The air shimmers as if with heat even in winter, and lights rise from beneath the soil. He also wrote about entire expeditions disappearing when they attempted to explore caverns along this line. 5 centuries later, geological survey teams vanish in those exact same regions. New Mexico, Colorado, Turkey, Shanxi, each disappearance occurring within miles of the 37th parallel. These ancient maps weren't marking a political border. They were marking a phenomenon, a planetary division modern science still struggles to define. They were warning future generations about something powerful, invisible, and alive. What did ancient mapmakers know? How did they detect something beneath the earth and above it at the same time? One theory suggests the ancients could perceive electromagnetic changes with their bodies in ways modern humans cannot. Another proposes they inherited knowledge from a forgotten civilization that understood Earth's energy grid far better than we do today. A third theory suggests ancient travelers witnessed phenomena, lights under mountains, rifts in the earth, unnatural storms, strange disappearances, that compelled them to draw this line as a caution for future generations. But the most unsettling theory is that the divide of two Earths represents a boundary between dimensions, a seam where reality folds, a band where the physical world and something else overlap. Many legends say this divide is thinner, weaker, more permeable. People vanish not because they get lost, but because they step through something they were never meant to cross. Along the 37th parallel, the divide seems to open during certain magnetic surges, during EM bursts, during celestial alignments. Animals sense it. Lights emerge from it. Survey teams walk into it. Ancient cultures avoided it. Modern governments build facilities on it, and old maps label it with warnings. These maps all share a chilling detail. The line is always drawn with unbroken precision, as if the cartographers wanted to make sure there was no mistake. A perfect horizontal cut across the world, marking where the Earth changes character, where two realities touch. At first glance, these maps seem absurd, crude, mythical. But when you layer them onto a modern geophysical map, the alignment is perfect. They knew. Somehow they knew. The divide of two Earths is not poetic language. It is a description, a boundary, a threshold. Ancient cartographers documented it because they saw its effects. Lights in the ground, thunder with no clouds, mountains that hummed, people who walked into mist and never returned. They mapped it because it was dangerous. They mapped it because something used it. They mapped it because they didn't want future generations to make the same mistakes. And now, with satellites, EM sensors, and modern disappearances lining up exactly with their drawings, the truth is no longer easy to ignore. The Earth we stand on is not the only Earth. And along the 37th parallel, the two worlds overlap. When NASA first launched satellites capable of scanning Earth's magnetic fields, atmospheric layers, radiation belts, and surface anomalies, the agency expected mechanical glitches, solar interference, and the usual technical failures that come with space hardware. What they didn't expect, what no one could have predicted, was that dozens of satellites would consistently deactivate, malfunction, or lose telemetry over the exact same horizontal band of Earth. A band that aligns perfectly with the 37th parallel, not once, not twice, but repeatedly, year after year, across multiple missions using different generations of technology. NASA publicly blames solar flares, micrometeoroids, software errors, malfunctioning power systems. But privately, engineers whisper a different theory, one far more unsettling. Something is interfering with satellites, something rising from the ground, not the sky, something the satellites can record only in fragments, strange bursts of radiation, pockets of distorted magnetic fields, and sudden drops in electrical charge, as if the spacecraft is flying through an invisible curtain that drains its power. And every one of these events occurs over the same zone, the 37th parallel. It began quietly in the late 1970s. NASA's early Landsat missions captured brief blackouts as they passed over certain regions of the American Southwest. Engineers blamed it on aging hardware, but then the same thing happened to Landsat 3, 4, and 5. Each failure synchronized with the satellite passing over Colorado, Utah, Arizona, or New Mexico. The blackouts lasted seconds, sometimes minutes. Instruments rebooted, clocks reset, onboard memory scrambled. NASA added shielding. The blackouts continued. When the Hubble's early test batches of Earth scans were analyzed, technicians found anomalies. Thin streaks of static exactly aligned with the 37th latitude. The streaks resembled interference from a powerful electromagnetic field. Radiation spikes appeared in the data, followed by dips in voltage. These readings didn't match solar events. They didn't match known cosmic sources. They came from Earth. Engineers initially suspected military activity, classified energy experiments, radar sweeps, or communication bursts. But the military denied involvement, and the anomalies didn't line up with the known testing schedules. They lined up with something else entirely. Something geophysical, something ancient, something that had been active long before satellites existed. In the 1990s, NASA launched the Terra and Aqua satellites, equipped with advanced spectral sensors. For the first time, they could scan the Earth's magnetic skin with unprecedented detail. The anomalies over the 37th parallel intensified. Instruments detected vortex-like distortions in the magnetic field, swirling pockets of energy rising kilometers above the surface. These distortions were strongest over regions already associated with underground tunnels, EM bursts, cattle mutilations, and geological disappearances. During one pass over New Mexico, Terra unexpectedly shut down. Its systems rebooted in safe mode, wiping part of its memory in the process. NASA's internal report noted unexplained electromagnetic surge from ground origin. That phrase alone was alarming, because satellites are built to handle energy from space, not Earth. Yet, the surge came from below. A year later, Aqua reported nearly identical interference, a powerful spike in low-frequency energy struck the satellite, causing its attitude control system to drift off alignment. Engineers had to manually correct its orientation. The incident was classified, and the explanation was sealed. When NASA launched its magnetic mapping satellite, SWARM, the anomalies became impossible to dismiss. SWARM was built specifically to measure the Earth's magnetic field down to subtle fluctuations. But over the 37th parallel, its readings became chaotic. Instruments oscillated wildly, magnetometers saturated, as if absorbing a pulse far stronger than anything occurring naturally. For 3 entire passes, SWARM recorded nothing but noise, dense, swirling, patterned noise that looked disturbingly artificial. Ground teams compared the data to solar flare records. No match. They checked microwave interference. No match. They checked atmospheric storms. No match. What SWARM measured could only have come from the surface or below, like a magnetic engine deep beneath the crust powering up, shutting down, or shifting. The most disturbing data came from satellites equipped with infrared detection systems. Over the 37th zone, they captured heat signatures that made no sense. Circular bursts of warmth expanding outward across miles, lasting only seconds before cooling instantly. These bursts resembled energy discharges rather than geological phenomena. There were no volcanic systems in the region, no known geothermal activity that could explain such patterns. And yet the heat signatures appeared again and again, always in perfect synchronization with the electromagnetic distortions. Then came the event NASA never disclosed publicly. During a routine pass in the early 2000s, a satellite in polar orbit recorded a sudden, massive blackout over the 37th parallel. Every system went dark for nearly 2 full minutes. Onboard cameras captured only a fuzzy glow across a stretch of land in Colorado, a glowing arc curved like a dome. When the satellite rebooted, half of its navigation system was corrupted, and its backup memory was unreadable. Engineers had never seen a complete shutdown triggered so perfectly, so cleanly, so selectively. One technician described the event as the satellite flying through a wall of invisible electricity. Another called it a pulse from something intelligent. NASA used different words: localized interference, aberrant reading, data irregularity. But the pattern continued. Multiple satellites, American, European, Japanese, reported instrument failures over the zone. ES's cryosat detected vertical magnetic funnels reaching toward orbit. Japan's ALOS captured images showing faint circular ripples in the ionosphere above the 37th band, ripples that should not exist unless something below was pushing upward with force. The most chilling incident came from a classified satellite NASA was testing with the Department of Defense. This satellite carried experimental sensors designed to detect subterranean structures through gravitational anomalies. As it flew over the 37th parallel, the sensors went into overload. They detected a cavity beneath the Earth. Massive, symmetrical, structured, not a cave, not a rock formation. Something organized, geometric, mechanical. The readings were so extreme they triggered a failsafe, shutting down the satellite. It never came back online. Engineers on the project were instructed never to mention the data again. Yet, patterns remain. Why do satellites deactivate over this line? What force rises strong enough to interfere with machines orbiting hundreds of kilometers above Earth? There are several theories inside NASA, none publicly acknowledged. Some believe the 37th parallel is a band of intense tectonic or geothermal energy, though this fails to explain the precise structure of the anomalies. Others suspect classified military experiments, though the disturbances appear in regions where no agencies operate. A few believe the anomalies are geological, evidence of underground voids generating electromagnetic resonance. But the theory whispered late at night, in rooms where engineers speak only off the record, is far stranger. That the 37th parallel is an access point, a vein of planetary energy that something, whether natural or not, uses as a conduit. Something powerful enough to reach into orbit. Something old enough to have existed long before any human mapmaker marked this line as the divide of two Earths. If satellites are deactivating, it might not be a malfunction. It might be a warning, or a defense system, or an interaction with something monitoring the surface as closely as we monitor the sky. NASA will never admit this publicly, but the satellites keep shutting down. The data keeps disappearing. and the 37th parallel keeps humming. Silent, invisible, alive. Whatever lies beneath this band does not want to be seen, or perhaps it is simply not ready to be understood. For centuries, we've believed the earth beneath our feet is solid. Stone, magma, metal, pressure, gravity. A physical world, measurable and predictable. Yet, along the 37th parallel, the ground behaves differently. Instruments glitch, signals bend, magnetic fields ripple like disturbed water. Light behaves strangely. Space seems to warp in subtle but undeniable ways. To most people, these are anomalies, quirks of geology or atmospheric noise. But to certain researchers, physicists, and underground theorists inside classified circles, these anomalies point to a far more unsettling possibility, that the 37th parallel may be the boundary line between two layers of reality, a seam where the real Earth meets a simulated crust, and an interface between what exists naturally and what has been engineered, projected, or overlaid. What would it mean if the ground beneath us is not uniform? What if some parts of the world are physical while others are constructed? And what if the 37th parallel marks the fault line between the two? This idea sounds impossible until you look at the evidence. Engineers measuring seismic waves along the 37th parallel have recorded echoes that don't behave like natural stone. In certain regions, seismic pulses bounce back too quickly, as though hitting something hollow or reflective. Other times, they slow dramatically, as if traveling through a dense, unfamiliar medium that absorbs vibration unnaturally well. These readings puzzled geologists for decades, until one specialist, working anonymously, described the sensation bluntly. It's like part of the crust is counterfeit. Even more disturbing are the harmonics. In physics, real geological layers produce predictable resonance frequencies. But along the 37th parallel, the harmonics oscillate irregularly, almost artificially. They stabilize into patterns that look more like computational artifacts than natural resonance. One physicist described the data as the ground having a refresh rate. When teams attempted to publish their findings, the papers were quietly suppressed. Then there are the thermal anomalies. Satellite infrared scans reveal that certain stretches along the parallel cool and heat faster than the surrounding land, far too quickly for natural material. Rocks do not change temperature at digital speed. Soil does not respond to sunlight with perfect linearity. Yet, certain zones behave exactly like surfaces that are thermally regulated, like layers designed to maintain a specific temperature signature for the sake of stability. When the sun rises, these zones heat in a uniform wave. When the sun sets, they cool in a synchronized drop. The thermal map looks less like geology and more like a programmed environment reacting to an update. The indigenous legends make even more sense in this light. Tribes speaking of sky veins, hidden earth, two skins of reality, and divides between worlds may have been describing something they witnessed directly, something they sensed intuitively. Ancient people often perceived truths modern instruments struggle to detect. Their stories speak of mountains that flickered, ridges that hummed, and ground that opened into light rather than stone. They spoke of places where reality felt thinner, lighter, as if the world beneath their feet were layered like fabric. Now, imagine for a moment that the Earth is not a single natural object, but a hybrid, part organic, part constructed. Imagine that a civilization, ancient, advanced, or non-human, once modified the planet's crust to hide something, protect something, or separate two incompatible systems. The divide could stabilize energy. It could shield deeper layers. It could preserve something beneath. What if the simulated crust is a cover? What if the natural Earth lies deeper? What if the 37th parallel marks the border between these two worlds? Strange electromagnetic bursts detected along the parallel strengthen this theory. EM pulses resembling computational resets occur in clusters, often following geometric patterns inconsistent with natural geology. In computer systems, a state boundary, where two systems meet, often radiates interference at predictable intervals. The same pattern appears along the 37th parallel. Bursts occur in waves, synchronized across hundreds of miles, as if triggered by a deeper layer running below the crust. NASA satellites report deactivation precisely as they fly over these areas. Their sensors overload, their memory corrupts, their power drops. It is almost as if they are flying over a shielded zone, like a firewall protecting the layer beneath from detection. One classified satellite built to scan geological density detected a vast cavity beneath the parallel, so smooth, so perfectly uniform, that it resembled manufactured architecture rather than natural cavern. Moments later, it shut down entirely. Some believe this cavity is part of a hidden world, a genuine Earth, and the layer above it is a projection, a controlled environment, a simulation designed to mask the truth. If so, the 37th parallel becomes the seam where authenticity frays, a line where the simulated crust is at its weakest, where the projection becomes unstable, where the deeper truth leaks through. This could explain why cattle mutilations occur in geometric patterns, survey teams vanish without trace, lights appear under mountains, tunnels align with magnetic routes, military bases cluster precisely along the line, ancient maps mark it as the divide between worlds, indigenous legends warn of two Earths touching. Every phenomenon becomes consistent, every mystery becomes coherent, every anomaly becomes logical. Some theorists propose that the Earth, long before humans, was designed as a layered structure, that the deeper layer is a natural original world, while the surface is a managed environment. A simulation does not mean fake. It can mean regulated, protected, partitioned. A simulation can prevent instability, shield life, or hide something extraordinary below. Perhaps the deeper layer houses remnants of an ancient civilization. Perhaps it holds biological or technological systems beyond our understanding. Perhaps it protects something dangerous. Or perhaps it simply maintains the planet's equilibrium, like a shell around a sensitive core. In computational theory, a boundary between two systems often produces anomalies. Frames glitch, signals distort. Sensors detect interference. Organisms sense what machines cannot. Along the 37th parallel, all these phenomena occur. Cameras malfunction, animals panic, humans report lost time, strange dreams, overwhelming dread. People describe walking through areas where the air feels thick, where sound behaves strangely, where shadows flicker unnaturally. What if these sensations are symptoms of two realities meeting? A simulation layered on top of a natural world would require immense power and immense stability. The strongest energy lines of the planet would be used to anchor it. The 37th parallel intersects these lines perfectly. If the simulated crust slips, even slightly, the system beneath could bleed through. Lights, pulses, electromagnetic waves, tunnels, vibrations, anomalies, sudden opening of passages, sudden disappearance of people, sudden flickers of something deeper, something older, something real. The question then becomes, why create such a boundary? Why separate two Earths? One theory suggests the simulated crust maintains surface stability after a cataclysmic event, like a reset. Another suggests the deeper Earth is uninhabitable or forbidden or sealed off to prevent something from escaping. Some believe humanity itself is not meant to access the deeper layer, at least not yet. The divide acts as a safeguard, a firewall, a temporal lock. But the most unsettling possibility is this. Humanity lives inside a controlled environment, unaware of the authentic world beneath, and the 37th parallel marks where the control system thins, where the veil flickers, where the truth leaks through. If satellites fail there, it is because they detect something they are not meant to see. If survey teams vanish, it is because they crossed into a layer they were never meant to enter. If indigenous legends warn of it, it is because ancient people witnessed the seam open. If ancient maps mark it, it is because early explorers saw the divide with their own eyes. The idea that Earth may have two layers, one natural, one simulated, feels impossible. Yet every anomaly along the 37th band points in the same direction. Something about that line is different from the rest of the planet, something deeper, something hidden, something carefully maintained. Could it separate the real from the simulated? Not only could it might have been doing exactly that for thousands of years. Imagine the Earth not as a perfect natural system, but as an engineered environment. Complex, layered, dynamic. A world running on rules so ancient and so deeply embedded that humanity mistakes them for the laws of physics. Now, imagine that such a system, like any sophisticated structure, requires maintenance. Not constant repairs, not visible intervention, but periodic checks. An inspection process built into the very architecture of the planet. a debugging protocol. And what if, hidden in plain sight, the 37th parallel is that line? A global boundary where the system inspects itself, corrects errors, rewrites functions, and stabilizes reality. At first glance, the idea sounds impossible. Why would the Earth need debugging? Why would nature require a maintenance strip? But anomalies concentrate along this parallel. Electromagnetic bursts, unexplained lights, tunnel networks, ancient sites aligned with celestial precision, military secrecy, missing people, deactivated satellites. It is the only line on the planet where so many strange events converge. Not scattered, not random, clustered, repeating, pulsing, as if something beneath the surface is running diagnostics. Consider what debugging means. In any complex simulation or engineered world, glitches appear where stress accumulates. Systems must correct themselves, preventing collapse. If the Earth operates on layered physics, geophysical on top, electromagnetic beneath, informational or computational deeper still, then a boundary between layers would be the ideal place for checks. A line where upper processes is sync with lower ones, where reality recalibrates. Along the 37th parallel, the Earth behaves as if something is calibrating it. Magnetic fields spike suddenly, then return to normal. EM bursts appear out of nowhere, then vanish as quickly as they came. Wildlife reacts to stimuli humans cannot detect. Landscapes hum. The ground vibrates without seismic cause. Time distortion reports increase near certain ridges. Minutes lost, memories blurred. People describe walking into areas where their thoughts feel hijacked, slowed, sharpened, or distorted. These aren't supernatural experiences. They're symptoms of a system rebooting. Imagine a vast planetary mechanism running periodic diagnostics, checking energy flow, correcting magnetic drift, scanning biological systems, stabilizing tectonic stress, monitoring changes in atmospheric charge. That mechanism would require a global route where all geological, biological, and electromagnetic data converge. A horizontal band would be ideal, equidistant from poles, stable, evenly influenced by seasonal shifts, easily aligned with the planet's natural circuits. The 37th parallel sits exactly at such a point, not randomly but mathematically. It's the balance zone between multiple Earth systems. In simulation theory, this would be called an interface layer, the place where the simulation checks its boundaries against the underlying base reality. This line, seen through a computational lens, is where physics updates. Now look at the events that keep happening there. Cattle mutilations with surgical precision and no blood. Underground tunnels carved with non-human geometry. Geological team disappearances with no trace. Satellite shutdowns exactly as they cross the line. Energy bursts coming from the ground instead of the sky. Old maps warning of the divide of two Earths. Indigenous legends speaking of sky veins beneath mountains. Each of these phenomena resembles the result of a massive debugging process. Cattle mutilations might be biological sampling, tests on genetic markers, environmental contamination, or ecological drift. The extraction of specific organs could be part of a comparative data set. In digital systems, sampling is routine. In planetary systems, sampling outside human awareness would be essential. Disappearing researchers might have encountered unstable regions, places where the debugging layer becomes active and the simulation momentarily thins. If the Earth performs localized reboots, people close to the epicenter could be caught between states. Not killed, not taken by aliens, removed, overwritten, or phased into an unrendered layer. EM bursts might be system pings, checks on the integrity of magnetic lines, verifying transmission pathways between layers. These bursts are too clean, too sudden, too synchronized to be natural. They appear like pulses of active maintenance. Tunnels forming beneath mountains could be conduits, paths through which data or energy flows. If the deeper Earth is the processing layer, tunnels aligned with the 37th parallel could function like fiber optic channels in a global network. Old maps recording the line as the divide of two Earths suggests ancient cultures witnessed something repeating. Cycles where the debugging layer became visible. Lights under the Earth, vibrating ridges, sudden openings, strange disappearances. They didn't have words for systems or simulation. They had myth. But myth often translates what the eye sees into the symbols the mind understands. Indigenous legends of glowing veins beneath mountains align perfectly with this. In modern language, glowing veins are energy conduits, debugging lines. They described pulses, hums, lights that appear and vanish, paths where reality feels thinner. This matches the idea of a system evaluating or adjusting itself. And then there are the satellites. If the 37th parallel is a debugging line, then satellites passing over it become foreign observers. Systems often protect their debugging processes from external detection. In software, this is called shielding. Satellites shutting down, glitching, or losing memory above the parallel looks exactly like a defense mechanism, preventing upper layers from seeing what the lower layers are doing. It's not malfunction, it's concealment. Consider the behavior of the Earth's magnetic field along the 37th parallel. It doesn't behave like normal geophysics. It bends unnaturally. It spikes at clean intervals, not random ones. It forms spirals, nodes, and field inversions identical to computational feedback patterns. On a magnetometer display, some of these patterns resemble debug logs, bursts of structured energy followed by silence. The Earth may be debugging its magnetic layer like a computer checks its circuitry. Some scientists studying these anomalies even described the parallel as looking like a checksum band. They meant it as a metaphor. But what if it's literal? What if the Earth is confirming that everything above and below that line is functioning correctly? There's a reason ancient people built monuments exactly on or near this parallel. They felt it. They saw the lights, the pulses, the openings. They interpreted them as portals, gates, sky spirits, divine boundaries. They were witnessing glitches, small tears in the outer layer, moments where the debugging line syncs with the visible world. There's also a reason modern governments build bases along this line. They don't want to protect the public from danger. They want to monitor the debugging process. They want to understand the system. They want to exploit it. And they want to prevent the world from realizing that the Earth is not as simple as it seems. The strangest evidence comes from time anomalies. Travelers along the 37th band report minutes that vanish, clocks that reset, GPS systems that drift, shadows that move unpredictably, dreams that become unusually vivid, senses that sharpen or distort, moments that feel out of sync. This is exactly what happens when digital environments undergo frame corrections, tiny resets to realign simulation layers. The 37th parallel might be the line where the planet corrects itself. It could be adjusting tectonic stress, stabilizing atmospheric data, recalibrating biological systems, or rewriting corrupted sectors of reality. Humans walking through a correction zone might feel the update. Fear, dizziness, clarity, déjà vu, paralysis, euphoria. These aren't supernatural. They're side effects of passing through a maintenance sweep. If Earth has deeper layers, processing layers, storage layers, dormant layers, the debugging line could be where these layers communicate, a seam where realities synchronize, a place where the planet repairs itself, hides its deeper functions, or stabilizes itself after too much human interference. The biggest question is, who placed the debugging line there? If Earth is natural, the line might be a result of planetary physics we haven't discovered yet. If Earth is engineered, the line might be part of its original design. If Earth is simulated, the line is a built-in maintenance corridor. If Earth is inhabited by deeper intelligences, the line might be their access point. Some believe the debugging line activates in cycles, perhaps every few thousand years. Some think it activates as needed, responding to stress, imbalance, or threats. Some claim it has been progressively waking up, reacting to humanity's rapid technological growth. The more we interfere with the natural or digital layers, the more the system adjusts. And then, the question no one dares to ask, if Earth has a debugging line, what error is it trying to fix? And more importantly, what happens when the system decides the error is us?